Hello everybody, this is Go Against the Tide TV, biblical Christian and freedom-loving voice from Poland, and welcome to our program Make Poland Great Again. Here in the studio I have, of course, Pastor Paweł Chojecki. Hello, and we have a special guest from America, from the United States of America, Mr. Christian Gomez, Research Project Manager of the John Birch Society and contributor for the New American Magazine. Great to have you here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be on the program with you. It's an honor.
Thank you so much. And we will talk about midterm election in the United States, which took place in October. But first, I want to ask you about a very important matter in Poland also and in European Union. German Chancellor Angela Merkel and President of France Emmanuel Macron said that European Union needs an own army, not to be dependent on NATO, and President Donald Trump responds on Twitter. Emmanuel Macron suggests building its own army to protect Europe against the US, China and Russia. But it was Germany in World War I and II. How did it work out for France? They were starting to learn German in Paris before the US came along. Pay for NATO or not? So what is your opinion about the idea of creating EU's army? Because it's in Poland, it's real threat because the chief of the ruling party, Law and Justice, is for creating an European army or troops.
From many years, not today
Jarosław
only.
Kaczyński is for this project. We are not. And what is your opinion?
Well, from a sovereignty point of view, obviously, this is a terrible idea for the sovereignty of all the member states of Europe, and it certainly poses a great security risk to each individual country. Most of the countries of Europe, as you know very well, have rejected the European Union Treaty and the European Union Constitution, for example, like in France and in elsewhere in Northern Ireland. I'm sorry, in Ireland, they've rejected the European Union Constitution. So this is just another scheme by the globalists, the deep state, internationalists imposing their will on the people of Europe. And from a sovereignty point of view, it would be better for each European country to be the master of its own foreign policy and not let it be dictated by Brussels, which constantly goes against the will of the people of the various countries in Europe.
So we are in Poland. We said that it will be a new Wehrmacht, you know, German troops.
And we compare Chancellor Merkel with Adolf Hitler. It's something unusual for you?
No, I agree with you about Chancellor Merkel. She is a deep state globalist, and like Hitler, she shares a vision for a new world order. So it is a grave threat to Europe that this is occurring. Also, we have the French finance minister, Bruno Le Maire, who recently said in an interview that he wanted this new European army to be for an empire of peace. And we've seen in the past dictators like Adolf Hitler, for example, or even Joseph Stalin in the Soviet Union and many other Soviet dictators, but dictators in general throughout history, like Napoleon from France, who have said that their empire exists for peace. And when they say peace, it means peace as long as they are not attacked in any way, as long as their agenda goes on unhindered. So when the European Union talks about peace, well, they mean peace as long as it suits the agenda of those in Brussels. This is not with the accepted will of the people of Europe or the people of the various member states. I understand that French Finance Minister Le Maire has talked about making having Europe be a sovereign continent. Well, in order for Europe to be a sovereign continent, that means you have to diminish or erode the sovereignty of each nation state. And without the consent of the people, how is that any different than Adolf Hitler, who sought to annex the Sudetenland from Czechoslovakia, or who invaded Poland as well? This is the same thing being done to the European people more subtly today, and it would behoove the people all across Europe to oppose the concept of a European Union army for the sake of their own liberty and protection going forward in the future.
Of course, Poles knew very well that German Nazi socialists and Russian communists always fight for peace. It's nothing new for us, but let's go to United States. As we read in the Washington Post, the United States has lost its military edge to a dangerous degree and could potentially lose a war against China and Russia, according to a report released by bipartisan commission that Congress created to evaluate the Trump administration's defense strategy. Is that true? Is this report reliable?
Well, there have been lots of reports for several years now regarding the lack of security precautions that our country has. Well, what I mean to say is our security is indeed vulnerable to China and Russia, especially in the area of dependence to foreign military parts. For example, a lot of the software technology and other essential resources used to make military equipment like night vision, like the glass that goes in the night vision gear for U.S. military forces. A lot of the missile guidance systems use technologies, most of which are imported from communist China. And the U.S. military does rely a lot on trade with China, unfortunately. So if there was an all-out war, hypothetically, between the United States and communist China or Russia, we would be in a serious vulnerability because of our dependency to them. So this report, I had a chance to look at it. It's over 100 pages. I glanced through it. There's a lot of areas of concern that the report highlights. The question is, will Congress address these things? And part of the problem with the new Congress is now we have the Democrats have won a majority in the House of Representatives, and the Democrats, propelled by the Congressional Progressive Caucus, which is basically the Marxist socialist wing of the Democratic Party, they're going to want to cut military funding rather than expand it in these areas where it's needed, where it's most lacking, like space defense and other areas. And military spending is one of the few functions that Congress does that is actually constitutional. Unfortunately, there's a lot of waste in military spending, but there's a lot of military spending that's also needed, and it's not happening. And we're probably going to see drastic cuts proposed by the Democrats in Congress in the upcoming 116th Congress in 2019. That is not going to bode well for American security when it comes to withstanding adversaries like China and Russia.
Yeah, I just want to ask about what you were talking about, that a Republican lost the majority in the House of Representatives. And what do you think, what will be the results of this election, of this loss, and how it will impact on the capabilities and stability of Trump's administration in this process of making America great again?
Well, unfortunately, the Democrats did win a majority in the House of Representatives, but the Republicans, fortunately, gained a few more seats in the Senate, which is good when it comes to Senate confirmation of Supreme Court justices, should there be more vacancies in the next 2 years, and for the confirmation of other cabinet-level positions. So the fact that we've expanded a majority in the Senate for the Republican Party, that's good for President Trump. Now, with regards to the Democrats in the House having the majority, they're going to use that power, likely to obstruct for the next 2 years by issuing subpoena after subpoena against President Trump, requesting information, everything they can to slow down this administration. There's going to be a lot of debate back and forth between the House, controlled by the Democrats, and the Republicans in the U.S. Senate. I mean, the Democrats have a slim majority, but it's a majority nevertheless. So we're going to see a lot of obstruction, unfortunately. They're going to try to derail as much as they can of the Make America Great Again policies. in favor of advancing progressivism and their Marxist agenda with the hopes that they'll capture the White House in 2020. And hopefully that won't happen. Hopefully President Trump will be successful in making America great and keeping it great again, so we don't see a Democratic majority come in to subvert the objectives of getting back to limited government and the Constitution.
I would like to ask about your state, Wisconsin. What has gone wrong? You have a Republican majority, but Republican has lost in this midterm elections. What is going on in Wisconsin state?
Yes. Well, unfortunately, historically in the United States, when you have a president of one party, typically the other party, the opposition party, typically does better in midterm elections, even in state and in local races, typically, not all the time, but typically. And in the case of Wisconsin, it's actually quite surprising that Governor Scott Walker lost his re-election. I didn't see that coming. I don't think a lot of people in Wisconsin saw that coming. But the Democrats apparently seem to outnumber Republican voters in the state. There was a lot of discontentment with Governor Walker regarding Foxconn and other domestic issues that the Democrats were really hampering and using. I mean, the Democrats outspent Republicans across the country. Wisconsin was no exception. Where I live at home, personally, my wife and I received a lot of junk mail from the Democratic Party trying to get our vote, and we only got like 1 or 2 flyers from the Republicans, which shows you how much money the Democrats were using to try to capture the votes. And where I live in the Fox Valley area here of Wisconsin, the Republicans did pretty well, but in southwestern Wisconsin, Democrats turned out in larger numbers, especially Madison and Milwaukee. And it was surprising that the Democratic candidate Evers won. But even though that the Democrat won, Tony Evers, the governor-elect, the Republicans still have a majority in the state assembly and in the state Senate. So it's going to be interesting to see how things play out, because Governor-elect Evers has proposals to increase government funding in a whole host of areas, such as public education, whereas the Republicans want to make more cuts and keep the budget somewhat balanced and feasible. So it's going to be interesting to see how things play with a Democratic governor and a Republican legislature. So unfortunately, it doesn't. Governor Tony Evers probably won't be good news for Wisconsin, but there's always 4 more years for conservatives and constitutionalists to regroup and hopefully put up a candidate that's going to be a better candidate and will hopefully win from a constitutional viewpoint.
In Poland and in Europe, media both considered to be left-wing or right-wing. They claim that this midterm election show a defeat of Republican Party and a defeat of Donald Trump. Is that true? Is this real, or is just propaganda?
Well, it's definitely a setback, but I wouldn't say it's a major defeat. If you look at when Barack Obama was president, our last president, Democrat, in 2010, in his first midterm election, he lost about 63 seats in the House of Representatives. He still kept the Senate. The Democrats still kept the Senate at the time, but they lost 63 seats in the U.S. House, which is the largest number of House seats lost in an election since Harry Truman was president way back in the 1940s, and with the 1946 midterm elections, in which the Democrats lost a lot of seats then and the Republicans gained a lot of seats in that election. Trump's losses in the House were not that extensive. And if you look at most of the races where Republicans did poorly, these were establishment Republicans for the most part. There was a handful of really good Republicans that did lose, like Dave Bratt in Virginia. But in his case, you had a third-party candidate that made a sizable difference that probably tilted that race in favor of the Democratic candidate. But if you look at the other races for the U.S. House of Representatives where the Democrats defeated the Republicans, those were mostly Republicans that had lower scores on our Freedom Index, which is something that the New American Magazine produces that rates the voting score of each member of Congress based on the top 10 votes in accordance to whether those votes are in line with the American Constitution or not. So a lot of the Republicans that lost were Republicans that were not very conservative. They were what we call rhinos, Republican in name only, establishment Republicans or Rockefeller Republicans, to use a term from the past. So for some of those Republicans to be gone, maybe it's better for the Republican Party because we have less of the bad fruit for the most part. But it certainly isn't great in terms of having a Democratic majority, because that's not any better. Obviously, the Democrats are outright crazy for the most part. But if this was a defeat for Trump, as the media is saying left and right in Europe and in the United States, in most places, then Trump should have lost the Senate, right? But he didn't. He expanded the number of seats in the U.S. Senate. I mean, right now we just heard that in the state of Arizona, the Democrats won that race. But overall, the Republicans still have more seats than the Democrats. And it looks like in Florida, we still don't have the total vote count. But as of now, it looks like the Republican candidate there is going to come out victorious. So that's good for the president's agenda to have a majority party that he can work with that's his own party. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't a defeat. It was a small setback at best or at worst, depending on your viewpoint. But I think that the president is this is not going to stop President Trump from continuing to fulfill and make through on his good promises.
And we have a question about atmosphere in John Birch Society, or do you know maybe about the atmosphere in the Republican Party or its voters, supporters? Are they discouraged or encouraged after this midterm election?
Well, I think there is a little bit of discouragement regarding the House of Representatives, but considering how much worse it could have been, like when Obama was president and or when Bill Clinton was president, how they lost a lot more seats, the ruling party at the time, the Democrats. In our case, with the Republicans being the current, having been the party in government right now, losing not as many seats, it isn't so bad. So, but regarding discouragement, the Republicans haven't been very encouraging either. For example, President Trump is doing a lot of good, but at the same time, there's some bad stuff coming out of the administration, respectively, the United States, Mexico, Canada agreement, USMCA, and NAFTA replacement, which is basically a scheme to build a European Union-like entity for North America, or a North American Union. And the USMCA is being supported by the Republicans. So the fact that President Trump, unfortunately, and the Republicans are supporting this measure because they think it's good, that's somewhat discouraging for us. But one of the main issues of the John Birch Society campaigns right now is to stop the USMCA and to get us out of NAFTA, the present trade arrangement that we have with Canada and Mexico. So we hope that in the coming months that we can build awareness on this issue and that we could hopefully defeat these trade schemes, because they're not really about trade. They're about globalism. They're about regionalization. They're about integration. And integration means a detriment to sovereignty. So that part there is discouraging. And with regards to the Democrats, they've said that they want to add more enforcement provision. They like the USMCA. They like the progressive aspects to it. In fact, the Canadian Foreign Affairs Minister, Chrystia Freeland, I believe her name is, she called the USMCA a very progressive agreement. And the Democrats like that here in America. They like that it's a very progressive agreement. So we're hoping to encourage President Trump and the Republicans, all members of Congress really, to wake up, look at this agreement, look at what it says, and to hopefully reject it. That's probably the biggest discouragement that the John Birch Society probably has with President Trump, Congress in general. And hopefully we can educate the American people and Congress and the President about why the USMCA it would lead to America being in an arrangement like the European Union, and why we don't want that. That's bad for sovereignty.
I would like to ask you about evangelical pastors and evangelicals in general. What was their attitude to this election and to supporting and voting for Republicans?
Most evangelicals stay committed to electing Republicans, mainly because of the pro-life issue, the right to life issue. There is hardly, I can't even think of a single Democrat. I could be wrong, maybe there's one, but I don't know of a single Democrat in the U.S. House or the U.S. Senate that claims to be pro-life. Almost virtually all the Democrats favor abortion and Planned Parenthood, and that has propelled many evangelical Christians to walk away, to leave the Democratic Party. In fact, in the 1976 presidential election, when Jimmy Carter was elected, he was elected with the support, as a Democrat. Jimmy Carter was a Democratic president. He was elected with a lot of Christian support because Jimmy Carter was a Southern Baptist and a Sunday school teacher, and a lot of evangelicals like that. But the policies of Jimmy Carter, increasing government, even the Democratic Party's support for Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court decision that basically made abortion the law of the land, people's access to that, that has made the evangelicals, for the most part, walk away, and even Catholics and Mormons and Orthodox Jews, religious people in general, to walk away from the Democratic Party. This time around, I would say that there's strong evangelical support for President Trump. Not just among white evangelicals, but even among African American pastors, Black evangelical pastors, Hispanic evangelicals are very supportive of this administration, and so the support is there. But as is the problem with most Americans in general, there is a lot of apathy with the American voters. A lot of people seem to have this mindset. Just in general, liberals and conservatives even fall into the same trap, where they think that the most important election is the presidential election. So they will vote in the presidential election. But then when it comes to midterm elections for Congress, they don't really vote so much. So they don't turn out in the same large numbers because they think, well, we have our president in the White House. We're good. We don't have to worry. And that's not true. So there is still a large amount of apathy, even within evangelicals, within Christians, within all groups of Americans, that don't realize the importance of voting on important issues, on especially when it comes to Congress, because with the Democrats in control of the House of Representatives, they can continue funding abortion. Now, the Republicans under Paul Ryan actually were still funding Planned Parenthood through the omnibus bills, as they were called, that Congress was passing, which is just terrible. With the Democrats, you're going to get more of that, obviously. So evangelicals support the president, and they oppose funding of Planned Parenthood and funding of programs that are contrary to a Christian worldview. So I would say evangelical support is strong.
That's why we talk in our television, which is Christian television, about politics and social matters, and we want to activate also our Polish Christian to be aware of politics and so on. And to be active. Yeah, and to
not
be
only
active.
Aware.
That's right. So
yes,
thank you for this encouragement. Let's talk about foreign affairs, because as you probably know, in October, 130,000 Taiwanese people took part in the demonstration in Taipei, the capital of the country, with banners like "Say yes to Taiwan," "Say no to China," and "Taiwan is Taiwan." And our Polish television supported this movement and organized an action as "Say yes to Taiwan" on Poland supports Taiwan in social media, and it's spread all over the world. Thank you for supporting this action, Mr. Gomez. And even the president of Taiwan and Prime Minister of Taiwan thanked for this action. And what do you think about this movement of freedom-loving Taiwanese people who want Taiwan to proclaim a full independence from communist China?
I think it is an absolutely wonderful idea. I personally, myself, endorse the idea wholeheartedly. I want to reiterate:
Yes.
say no to China, say yes to Taiwan. I love Taiwan. I love the people of Taiwan. God bless them. They have been through a lot, and the world has virtually betrayed Taiwan in favor of the Communist Party in China. This began way back in the 1940s when you had Harry Truman, again, a Democratic president in the White House just after World War II. And you had General George C. Marshall, I believe it was, cutting off supplies and aid to the nationalist Chinese forces on the mainland continent, which aided and helped Mao Zedong's forces in the ongoing Chinese Civil War, with the communists taking over in that regard. So America betrayed mainland China in that regard. With regard to Taiwan and the Taiwanese people, we have seen the United States support a one China policy, which says we only accept there's one China, except the way the U.S. does it is it's not one China, two states for the United States. The United States is clearly supportive of the Communist Party in China in terms of our government policy, and that's bad. We have seen how U.S. presidents do not have diplomatic relations with the presidents of Taiwan because they view Taiwan as being part of the one China policy. They don't want to get the Chinese mad. Fortunately, our government still sells arms to Taiwan, and if Taiwan was not a sovereign, independent country, then you wouldn't be selling arms to it, right? The United States would not be selling arms to a province in Canada to protect itself from the Canadian government. The U.S. wouldn't be selling arms to Quebec, for example. But the U.S. does sell arms to Taiwan because the United States has a defense treaty with Taiwan. And I think it's important that Taiwan reclaim its sovereignty, because right now Taiwan is treated like it doesn't exist. It's just the People's Republic of China. And it behooved Taiwan to be independent, to break itself apart from communist rule, from a Chinese identity, because Taiwan has its own culture, its own rich history, and the people of Taiwan, they want their identity to be recognized. So I fully support Taiwan's move to be a sovereign, independent republic apart from any influence from China. Absolutely, that's a great idea.
I would like to show you our magazine, Go Against the Tide, and there is our action in Facebook. You can join. I'm telling to our viewers, you can join this action on Facebook or Twitter.
Yeah. Say yes to Taiwan, say no to China, and
Amen.
And do you think that President Donald Trump will support the independence of Taiwan?
Well, the great thing about President Trump in terms of the issue of Taiwan was after he won the election for the presidency, he spoke with the Taiwanese president over the phone. And of course, many in the American media were really upset, especially the Democrats, but even some establishment neoconservative Republicans. Oh, no, this is terrible. This is breaking the one China policy. This is going to get the communist leadership, Xi Jinping, all upset that President Trump was having dialogue, at the time President-elect Trump, having dialogue with the Taiwanese president. I think that President Trump is going to be a strong ally for freedom, for liberty, in terms of Taiwan's independence from China. I don't know if there will be some kind of war that develops from this. Hopefully not. No one wants anyone to die, but hopefully Taiwan can become independent, fully independent from China, and with the defense treaties that the United States has in place with Taiwan, hopefully China would not attack Taiwan and would let Taiwan be Taiwan.
Yeah, and we are just talking before the program that our Polish embassy created a very bad note about the Taiwan, because one communist journalist asked our embassy to, how to say?
No, to say what is the Polish opinion about opinion of our government about our private social action, and Polish embassy in China,
Beijing,
make announcement to the communist newspaper Global Times, I think, in China, and they said that Poland strongly support the agreement between our communist leader from 1939 with Mao Zedong, and that this Polish government, which is led by so-called patriotic and conservative party, has completely agree with this communist agreement. So it was very upsetting. It's shame on you, this this embassy.
So
absolutely, that reminds me of when President Richard Nixon, a Republican, but a globalist Republican, a bad Republican actually, when he visited communist China, reporters asked United States Senator Barry Goldwater, a conservative constitutional Republican, a very good conservative, they asked Senator Goldwater, what do you think about President Nixon being in China right now? And Goldwater told the reporters that something to the effect of, good, he should stay there, hope he doesn't come back, something like that. And, that's unfortunately been the position of our government as well. We have the Republican president, Richard Nixon, in the 1970s, supposedly an anti-communist, supposed to be the patriotic sort of president in our country. And he was the one that opened the dialogue with Mao Zedong and the Communist Party regime there in Moscow. I'm sorry, in Beijing. Oh, there's communists in Moscow, too, even now. But with the communists in Beijing, open dialogue with them, and essentially threw Taiwan under the bus. It's funny how your Polish ambassador says that your country supports the agreement made decades ago, but how about they have a national referendum? How about they ask the people of Poland what the people of Poland think? Should Poland have diplomatic relations with communist China, or should it also have relations with diplomatic relations with Taiwan? Let the Polish people decide. And I don't think the Polish people are probably going to side with what the government line is. And because your country especially, having known what communist oppression was, why have trade? Why have diplomatic negotiations with an ally of the former Soviet Union, an ally of the country that helped oppress millions of your people? So I would imagine that the people of Poland do not support one China. People of Poland probably stand with a free and independent anti-communist Taiwan Republic.
There is a lot of support from our Polish viewers. This action, which I mentioned, is very big, and Taiwanese and American media told about it, but Polish media are silent.
Yeah. Because
Polish controlled by government media, of course. Not free media.
The deep state globalists don't want to talk about certain things.
Yeah. Thank you for these words, especially in the name of Taiwanese people. And we ask everybody to support and to join this action, say yes to Taiwan. And my last question will be about your situation about U.S. borders, because migrant caravan groups arrive by hundreds or thousands at your border, and Donald Trump called these groups as an invasion. And he said that the USA want people to come to your country, but they have to come legally. And what is your opinion about this group and why this group came at the U.S. border just in the time of the campaign before the midterm election, and what is the cause of this whole confusion?
Well, these caravans have certainly been aided and orchestrated by globalist forces. We've seen Soros funding, supporting caravans like this one and other ones in the past. And the big establishment media, which has the same beliefs as George Soros, unfortunately, supports these caravans. And it is very interesting, like you point out, that they were headed this way just prior to the elections. There have been some indictments in the state of Texas where Democratic Party officials were trying to get illegal immigrants, illegal aliens rather, to register them to vote. So there's a lot of voter fraud in the United States in terms of illegal aliens being registered to vote and voting mostly for the Democratic Party. So this is likely a ploy to change the demographics, but more so than the demographics, change the politics of our country. Because anytime you have a massive amount of migration, an influx of a large group of new people coming in to a country, that it overwhelms the existing population, it overwhelms the government services, and it changes the politics. Where you have a community that might be more conservative, now you have a lot of immigrants coming in, or migrants, because these aren't coming here legally, so they're really just migrants. So you have a lot of migrants coming in here illegally, using government services, hoping for some kind of amnesty, maybe illegally registered to vote through some kind of methods where the Democrats are illegally registering them to vote. And what are the results of that? Well, then you get different kinds of mayors, different kinds of congressmen. You start to change the politics of the country. So the Democratic Party has a plan to make the state of Texas become blue. It's called the Blue State Project. At least that was the name of it several years ago. And part of that plan includes getting a large amount of voter turnout among particularly Hispanics of a migrant background who've come here either illegally in the past at some point or their ancestors. So we have immigration laws for a reason. So we know who's coming into the country, to vet their health, to vet their criminal record, so we know who's coming in, and also to have a manageable number come in so they could assimilate and embrace the American culture and American society before casting an informed vote. So with this migrant caravan, this is actually, these migrants, this is an affront to immigrants that live in America, actually. This is an affront to immigrants that have come here legally, that went through the long process of applying for citizenship, whether they're from Mexico or whether they're from Europe or Africa or Asia. If they have come here legally by the books the right way, this is an affront to them, because these people are saying, we want to cut in line. We have a right to be in your country. And no, you don't have a right to come in the United States illegally. You can try to apply for legal citizenship, and we would hope that that anyone who does come here legally gets well informed and educated, so they can be an educated, well informed voter. But these migrants, they have no intention of being educated voters. They want to come here for their own benefit, of course, but also they're coming here as basically pawns of the Democratic Party, to be used as pawns, and to be used as pawns by the deep state to elect more globalists to power, like we're seeing in Europe with the massive refugees coming in. What happens to these refugees in Europe? They stay there long enough. Maybe they are allowed to vote in countries like Sweden and in London. I mean, look at the city of London now. London has changed because of massive migration, either legal or illegal, but it's changed. And if a lot of migration comes to the United States, especially illegally, it's going to change the demographics of our country. It's going to change the demographics in Texas. And even though Ted Cruz, the Republican candidate, won his seat, the fact that Beto O'Rourke, the Democrat, did as well as he did, although he lost, is an indication that Texas is becoming more and more progressive in terms of voting. And this is because of higher voter turnout among Hispanics that, whether legal or illegal, we don't know yet, but a lot of higher voter turnout and that's not going to go well for the future of our country if these voters, these new voters, are not educated. So we need to make sure who is coming into the country. Immigration needs to be legal, not illegal migration, and education is always the key. Anyone who comes to this country, it's important that they be educated about the Constitution of our country, about liberty, about freedom. They have to embrace those concepts, hopefully, so they can cast informed votes to protect freedom and to limit the size of government. Because when you have people who come from countries like Guatemala and El Salvador, or maybe Venezuela, where they're used to having socialist regimes in power, they come here with the same mindset of, oh, I'm just going to vote for the party that's going to give me more of what I want, socialism, right? That's what they think. So that's a bad idea. We need to make sure that that immigrants that come here illegally understand the concepts of freedom, and that socialism is not the answer. Because if you're escaping socialism, don't bring it to America. Don't bring to America what you just left behind. But yeah, definitely President Trump, I think he's doing the right thing by sending troops to the border to try to prevent this illegal invasion, because that's what it is, from coming here and circumventing our nation's laws.
This deep state conspiracy is going on with some successes because the south of Texas are now blue, as you mentioned. So we will pray for your president, we will pray for America to solve wisely this problem.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And please pray that America would reject the USMCA agreement. I pray that the European Union would be dissolved, so every country in Europe could be free and sovereign, including Poland. God bless Poland, and I pray that God will help make Poland great again. And Poland will be great again if it's free and sovereign apart from the European Union. So we have to reject the European Union army idea. We need a kind of Brexit for Poland. Poland needs to exit the European Union. And for the United States, we need to pray that the United States would reject USMCA, anything that leads to a North American Union. Because at the end of the day, what is that? What is the purpose of a North American Union, a European Union, a TPP, all of these trade agreements, so-called? The point is to merge them together and have a global trade union, a global world government. And at that point, government will be more removed from the individual. It will be more concentrated in a fewer unelected bureaucratic elite that likely will not share a Christian worldview of any kind, or any religious worldview even for that matter. Probably an atheist world government, not too different than what we saw in the Soviet Union with the communists. So we have to pray for America, yes, and pray for Poland, pray for Taiwan, pray for all those that seek to be sovereign and be free and independent from regional and global government.
Amen. As you can see on the cover of our Going Against the Tide magazine, we would like to make Poland great again, and we would like Poland to be the second USA, second America in Europe, the land of the free, because of the brave.
And home of the brave.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Christian Gomez, Research Project Manager for the John Birch Society and contributor for the New American Magazine, was with us today. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
We will pray for you and your country.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, and God bless you all as well.
God bless you. And we hope that you will join our program in the future once more.
I would love to join your program again in the future. It'd be my honor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are Go Against the Tide TV, the Bible-based and freedom-loving Poles, and we are Pastor Paweł Chojecki.
Thank you.
Dominika Chojecka. Thank you so much.